Hello again, YouTube. AM Guitar Man here with another movie review. My second movie review in, good grief, sounds like forever. I don't think I've actually been to the theaters to see anything since I went to see Midsommar. Midsommar. Yes, that's how you're supposed to pronounce the name of that movie. So, I'm sure a lot of you have decided to do this weekend, yesterday decided to go see It Chapter 2. I was super excited about this movie because I absolutely loved the first one. I even loved the book of It. I actually read this tome, this 1,400, almost 1,500 long page book because I loved it so much. Now, It from 2017 was amazing, as a lot of you know. One of the best horror movies I think I've ever seen. Now, does It Chapter 2 live up to that same pedigree? Not exactly. It's not a bad movie, but it falls a little short of the first one. My biggest problem with it being the second act. The first act of the movie is great because it's straight out of the book. I loved it because it was straight out of the book. We see Mike Hanlon from the original It has stayed in Derry all these years, 27 years later, just to keep watch in case It would come back. And what do you know? It does come back. And he is tasked with calling up all of the losers who have gone on to all be big successes in whatever field they are in, and kind of say, hey, remember when we were kids and cut our hands and all held hands and decided if It ever comes back, we will too. It's time to come home. That scene was great. But once they get back to Derry, that's where the movie kind of stumbles, kind of falters. Kind of makes you go, why is this movie 3 hours long? It doesn't need to be this long. Because it's literally about an hour of the adult losers all wandering around Derry looking for something to connect them with their childhood because that's the weapon they're going to use to defeat It, supposedly. Now, most of the childhood scenes that you see for each individual character supposedly happened during the part of the first movie that you didn't see after they had their falling out. They, had a big fight after the house on Neibolt Street, after that incident, and had a falling out and didn't want to hang out with each other anymore. So apparently, these scenes you see in Chapter 2 happened during that time frame, which feels a little lazy to me. It feels a little Deus Ex Machina-ish. No, Deus Ex Machina is not the right term. Just feels kind of shoehorned in there. Kind of saying, yeah, this happened, you just didn't see it. Now, with that being said, I loved all of the actors, all of the adult versions of the children. Most of them did a really good job, particularly Bill Hader. Bill Hader steals the show as adult Richie Tozier. He does an amazing job. He and Ed are the comic relief of this movie. If it weren't for those two characters, this movie would be very depressing. They keep egging each other on through the whole movie, and it's the only source of brevity there is. So for that reason, I love those two characters. Now, the child characters that you see, these are not deleted scenes from the first movie. They actually had to go back and shoot these scenes with child actors that have grown up a bit since the first movie. So, especially with Finn Wolfhard, you can watch Stranger Things Season 1 and then go watch Season 3 and it almost doesn't look like the same person. He is growing like a weed. So they had to digitally de-age him. And it doesn't look right. It doesn't look right. He looks kind of Uncanny Valley-ish. And I found that distracting. He doesn't look quite right. And with some of the dialogue you hear during the kids' scenes, it almost doesn't sound right either. It almost sounds like it's been ADR'd. Like someone was recording, trying to speak in time with what was being said on screen. And for some reason, it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound natural. So, I'm not going to give away any spoilers. The final act of the movie is a little hokey. It doesn't stick 100% to the script of the book, which I honestly think it would have been better if they had. Because if you've seen the original the original miniseries, the way it ended was very similar to the book. But they changed something of that in this It Chapter 2, and it kind of loses something there, in my opinion. Oh, and a side note, there is a cameo appearance in this movie that I absolutely loved. I was giggling like a schoolgirl when I saw this cameo. It just made me that friggin' happy. So all in all, another issue I had with this movie is that it relies very heavily on jump scares, which is unfortunate. Jump scares, after a while, they become very predictable and feel very cheap. So all in all, if I said the original It was a 9, I would say It Chapter 2 is probably about a 7. Not a bad movie, but not the best sequel I've ever seen. I mean, sequels usually do lose something between 1 and 2. Like in Chapter 2, you see Pennywise a lot during, in broad daylight. And in the first one, he was all like in the darkness, in the sewers, creeping around. But you see him in broad daylight in this one, and it kind of loses something, in my opinion. But all that to be said, I'm not going to talk forever. This is going to be an hour-long video if I do. All that to be said, I do recommend It Chapter 2. Just don't go into it expecting it to be as good as the first one, because then you will be disappointed. I wasn't expecting this one to be completely 100% as good, so that's why I wasn't super disappointed in it. It's a good movie, but not as good. But until next time, until I see another movie I feel like reviewing, I'm AM Guitar Man. And you can also, if you like listening to two idiots talk about movies, you can check out our podcast that I have started with a friend of mine called Cinematic Blind Spots. You can find us on iTunes, on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, on Spotify, on Anchor, and on CastBox. We're on a bunch of different things. Cinematic Blind Spots. We will spend our time talking about films that one person knows that the other one doesn't. Hence the whole blind spot thing. Movies you didn't see coming. If my camera will stop focusing. There, good. I really need a new webcam. But until then, you guys take care. See you next time.